This was the first album you did with Charlie.
Yep,
first
one.
album.
That may be my favorite of all of them too.
All right. Now this story may be in the book, and I always tell this story when I'm giving tours of Capricorn. Tell the story about the writing of the South's Gonna Do It Again.
This is a long story. I hope you got enough battery power. Anyway, Charlie had come in as a guest shot on Marshall Tucker records.
Right.
And so after one of the sessions we did with him, he said, "Paul, I'm getting ready to do a project. How would you would you consider producing my band?" And boy, me and Charlie had already hit it off, and I thought, "Yeah, man, sure, let's do." And so we made a verbal deal to do it, and so then I went. They were going. I had never heard his band. I'd only heard him when he'd come in to play a few notes on the Tucker album. So he was going to be playing in Tuscaloosa a few weeks prior to when we were going to record. So I went over to see him play, and Charlie was very into playing guitar. And so they played the whole show, and the people appreciated him. They got a standing ovation. Up till then, Charlie never touched a fiddle on stage that whole night. So it's an encore. He came back and he had his fiddle and he played Orange Blossom Special, and the roof came off the place. And I think maybe they did a couple of more tunes. He stayed on fiddle, and the audience went nuts.
Yeah.
So afterward, I said, "Man, Charlie, this fiddle is that's what you need to be doing. That's what the people here tonight wanted to hear." And so let's consider doing some fiddle tunes on the album. So they came to Macon, and the first day they set up in the side room, what's now the other Studio B control room.
Yeah.
And we used that as a rehearsal hall. They set up the band in there and ran through the material. And I said, "But Charlie, there's no fiddle tunes in there." "Oh yeah, well we got one little thing we can do. We got a little instrumental that we can play, and we call it Fiddle Boogie, and so we got the recording, and they were cutting tracks, and they cut an instrumental to please me, I think, because I harped on the fiddle playing, and it had some cute little twin things, but with fiddle and guitar, and some stops and cute things, and Fiddle Boogie instrumental, and so I said, "Well, it's all right. It ain't quite what I had in mind." I said, this strength-wise as a song, it's not nearly as strong as like Long-Haired Country Boy and some other tunes.
Which is also on this album.
Yeah. I said, how about writing some lyrics? And yeah, okay, maybe I will. And he just kind of changed the subject. So we only were scheduled to be in there about 5 days to cut the album, really. And so every day we go in there, and I said, "What about those lyrics?" And we work on everything but that cut. I said, "What about the lyrics that you were going to try to write for that instrumental?" "Yeah, well, okay." So every day was the same story, and then he kept. Figured he was just telling me that to appease me, and so down it was to the last day recording. I said, "Charlie, tell me you've got some lyrics now." And he said, "Well, I got a few ideas." He says, let me turn the mic on and put that tape on, cue it up. Let me sing you a few things and some ideas I got, and tell me if you think it's any good." So he went out there and started singing about, and that's with the instrumental, right, for the Fiddle Boogie.
Yeah.
He went to singing about Richard Betts playing on that red guitar, and old Skinner's picking down in Jacksonville, and the Tucker band's cooking in Carroll, and he had written "The South's Gonna Do It Again," and all the engineers and we just fell out. We said, "Man, that's it! Yes, that's what I wanted to hear."
Yeah.
And that was the first single off the album. That was the hit.
That was a big hit. That was his first big hit.
Big hit. Of course, he went on and did later years. He did "Devil Went Down to Georgia," but as far as the biggest song, that was probably second biggest that he ever did. And so that's how that song came into being. And it could have just as easily as could have been a buried instrumental down in the album somewhere, But it was a platinum record right out of the chute. Shows you what a hit single can do for an album.
Oh, absolutely. Let's talk about Muscadine here. Your studio, you've had it for 40-something years.
Yep.
You've got a lot of vintage stuff.
You got to have somewhere to keep it.
Well, that's right. I mean, right over your right shoulder here is a Leslie speaker that you used in the HourGlass days.
Yes, Gregg and I both. We in the HourGlass lineup, instrument wise, we had a Hammond organ, and we piped it through that Leslie speaker. And next to it, we had a Wurlitzer electric piano side by side. Now today's keyboard players, Rusty knows what I'm talking about. Most of them, when they have more than one keyboard, they stack them up.
Yeah.
Well, there was two of us, so we just put them side by side, and we trade off. I'd play organ on some tunes, and I'd play piano on some tunes, and vice versa, and also play guitar in the HourGlass. We were just jumping around on different instruments, and on stage. So that Leslie I bought new in 1966, and it's still used nearly every day in sessions here, still cranking on.
And you have Gregg's Wurlitzer.
Got Gregg's Wurlitzer electric piano, and I bought that from him in 1974, I think it was.
Okay.
He said, "Man," he said, "you want this thing? I'll let you have it." He says, "I used it on 2 songs on the Fillmore live album." He said, "I've never used it anymore, and I've hauled it around on a few gigs, and it's more trouble than it's worth." And he said, "I'll let you have it." So I jumped at it.
Yeah.
So we used it a while at Capricorn Studio, and I had it in my house for a while, and its home is down here now.
Yeah, and you just showed me a picture of Gregg sitting at the keyboard, and there's a beer can on it.
Yeah, and the picture I found on the internet, Gregg is playing this thing, and there's a Budweiser can sitting right there. And I got to counting the screw holes on the top of the cover for the piano, and at the 5th screw hole, the beer can is sitting right in front of it. And I went out and looked at I thought, I wonder. And I went out and looked at the piano top, and in the 5th screw hole, there's a ring where the beer can had been sitting.
Yeah.
It was the one from that picture prior to 1974,
Yeah.
and it's still on there today.
Yeah. Here at Muscadine, you've done a lot of projects, and I got a few albums that are on Muscadine
boy.
Records.
Sugar Creek. This was one of the first projects we did here, and when we opened up in 1982, Sugar Creek Band,
Yeah.
off the train, and we did that on 8-track recorder. This is one I was proud of.
You know what? And there's a couple of songs on here, including the first song, "Faded Love,"
Yeah.
that still sound commercially viable today.
Yeah, there's several tunes on there. It's good.
All right, and this is the one I just got.
Oh yeah, E.G. Kight.
Yeah, somebody.
She was known as Gail Kight back in those days, and I think she just changed her name to E.G. because there was a lot of country, like Katie Lang
yeah,
and
okay.
and
T.G. Shepherd.
yeah, a
and-
lot of initials. And
Right.
She changed it.
And this was a country project before she.
Yeah, this was a country album. Matter of fact, I took this record to Nashville, and along with another project or two, and one of the heads of A&R loved this record, loved her voice, and held it for about 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Yeah.
He says, it was a lady. She said, "I love this girl's voice," and she says, I mean, maybe I'll sign her. She says, "Let me live with it and run it by a staff meeting
Yeah.
and see what the consensus is." After a month, she finally called back and says, "No." She says, "We weren't unanimous."
Oh,
She says, "I got the power." She said, "I could sign her, but then I'd have to go against several other people that are not into it."
Right.
So
Okay.
that's what one of those almost happened. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. I've got the Laid Back album in here, and I think that's all that's in the Magic Razzie bag.
Let me see the Laid Back album. I think I played on 1 or 2 songs. Anyway, I'm right here. If the camera picked that up, but I was playing clavinet.
Oh yeah.
And when this thing first came out, whoever wrote the liner notes put down that I played clarinet. I think later on they changed that.
Yeah.
I'd have to take time to read it.
Of the projects you've done, is there one project, or maybe more than one, that you thought this is going to be it,
Lots of those.
and it just didn't happen?
Yep. Not because it wasn't good, it's
Right.
just because I was the only one that thought it was good. There was a girl named Marsha Waldorf.
Oh, sure.
I would have bet you my britches that this would have been, that was going to be my first Grammy Award.
Uh-huh.
And I was the only one that cared for it at all on the label.
Okay.
It wasn't Southern rock. It wasn't Bonnie Bramlett, or
Yeah.
well, I love Bonnie. I'm just
Yeah, I got you.
she's kind of Southern rock, but Marshall was more. I mean, there's strings on it. In fact, Marshall played piano basically, but she also played cello as part of the string.
Okay.
But they buried it. They didn't promote it not for a second.
Yeah. Well, they didn't seemingly have much success with female artists anyway.
No, Phil always believed in Bonnie Bramlett,
Right.
and smartly so.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't? But I can't think of any other female artist that made it big.
Yeah. Is there one album, one song that you're most proud of? That
two
describes
records,
you?
the two albums that I'm most proud of is the first album I did with Charlie Daniels, Fire on the Mountain.
Fire on the Mountain.
And then there's of course, all the Tucker albums were good, but the double album, I thought that was a pretty interesting concept.
Yeah, that was
We had a
live and
it was a
studio.
live and a studio version.
Yeah.
They at that point they always wanted to do a live album,
Yeah.
and yet they came up with some material that wasn't ready to record live. The band hadn't really worked it up,
Yeah.
and a lot of the Tucker records, we worked them up in the studio as they were being, Toy would come in and he'd play on a flat top and sing along, and that'd be the first time a lot of the band members even heard it.
Oh, wow.
They didn't take time off to rehearse and work up an album worth of material. They were touring their brains out, and so it came time to do a record. They'd take off 3 weeks from touring, and Toy'd come in and he would have written a whole slew of songs, and we'd all hear them, and we'd say, okay, Paul, I'd point at the drummer, he'd fall in, and Tommy on bass, we'd jump in and we'd record it, and then maybe we'd take that guitar out, add two more on, and then we'd switch them around until it felt right.
Yeah.
And that's how the records were made.
Yeah.
And so they came up, they wanted to do a live album, but they had a whole batch of brand new tunes from right off of Toy's guitar that weren't ready to be played live. And so I said, let's do a studio record, and let's do a live one too.
Yeah.
So we took the old material and cut it live. So we didn't do the new stuff live.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Well, that's a smart idea, actually.
but there's a song on there, This Old Cowboy, that's the most fun of all the recordings I did. Most fun to play on
Right.
today.
Yeah.
If I went out and sat in with the band and played with Chris Hicks anywhere, he's going to kick off that song, and I love playing that.
Yeah, it's a great song.
Of course, Charlie Daniels' album, Fire on the Mountain, that's still buying shoes for the children.
Good to know.
I got a well-beaten path to the mailbox for that record.
And speaking of Charlie Daniels and live albums, you recorded quite a few of the volunteer jams, and
Yeah.
and you told me that was a nightmare because you didn't know.
Well, at that time, the first ones, there were no rehearsals.
Yeah.
It's just like,
And you didn't know
let's
who
show
was
up.
going to show up.
You
on
know,
stage.
but, a lot of times, even if we knew, there was no rehearsals that went into it. It's like a night at Grant's Lounge.
Oh yeah.
It's like you don't know who's coming, and there's no rehearsal. It's just jamming,
Yeah.
and that's all it was. So what can you produce of that?
Yeah.
You just kind of pick out the best of it, and maybe take it back in the studio, and if there's some sour notes, replace it in the little sheet in there.
Yeah,
A
yeah.
lot of people don't know. You
Right.
can dress up a live album.
Yeah. All right. One more story.
All right.
An album you recorded with Chuck Leavell here, and an audio magazine praised it highly. Tell me that story.
He recorded about 25 years back. He recorded one of his very first solo records, and it's just solo piano, and it's just a joy. I enjoyed working on that record with Chuck, and so it's called Forever Blue. And so sometime after that record came out, phone rang one day, and it was a writer for some audiophile magazine. I don't even remember what it was. So anyway, the guy wanted to know, he said, would you mind talking to me and tell me some of your recording secrets? your miking techniques you used on the piano. He said, but first of all, he says, that's my all-time favorite record, piano record. He says, every time a CD is submitted with its piano playing, I pull that record out as a benchmark to what a piano record should sound like. And of course, my head's swelling now, because I engineered it. So he was wanting to know, after that build-up, he says, what kind of mics were you using? How did you position them in the piano? And with that build-up, I just could not tell him that I used 3 Shure microphones, like $100 microphones.
SM57s?
SM57 was what had become, and still, my choice for recording with grand piano in stereo.
Yeah.
And so, I was coming up with ideas. I was tap dancing. I said, well, we use a condenser mic here, and we use a U47 aimed over the right shoulder, and U87's pointed towards the wall where we get the reflection, and then again, if we do a ballad, then we change it around. We put an AKG down it. I could just see this guy scratching his head, but I was tap dancing, and I never admitted that I used 3 $100 microphones on this grand piano.
I love that story. All right, so tell us about your album.
Everybody all my career said, you got any records? Why haven't you cut a CD? I got asked to headline a blues festival down in Dothan one year. My buddy Gil Anthony, a local radio personality down there, and had me to, because I'm from that area, from the bluegrass, not bluegrass, but
Wiregrass?
Wiregrass, thank you.
Yeah.
I get that mixed up. But Wiregrass area, they had this, and I being a local guy, they wanted me to headline it, and it scared me to death. But I worked up, I said, I had to explain that I'm a piano player, that I'm not a singer. I've never been an out front singer. I call it singing out loud. I've never sung out loud, but he wouldn't take no for an answer. So I had about 3 months lead way, and I worked up a bunch of tunes that I thought I could halfway sing. And so I had E.G. Kight's band to be the band, and I played along with her, with E.G., and I just knew they'd kill us.
Yeah.
But we went over great. They loved E.G. too, but they didn't throw anything at me. And by the end of the night, half of the audience was on stage singing "Can't You See?"
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, I thought, well, I've gone to all this trouble researching these songs, learning these songs. It'd be a shame to waste them on one show.
Yeah.
Why don't I record a CD?
Yeah.
So that's how the CD came about. I've always considered myself a crack filler. I play in the cracks.
Yeah.
And don't try to be flashy or stand out.
Sure.
Just kind of fill in the holes where it's needed. But on this one, I decided I'd step on up close to the end of front of the stage and turn it up a little bit and play every note I know. So that's how that came about. It's called Red Hot.
Red Hot, and on this album, Charlie Hayward from the Charlie Daniels Band, Jack Pearson, who played with the Allman Brothers, Chris Hicks, who plays with
Chuck Leavell, my buddy.
With Marsh Tucker, Chuck, Tommy Talton, Leroy Parnell. Oh, Pat Burgeson's on here playing harmonica. I used to see him in Nashville a lot. E.G.
There's approximately 35 personnel on that CD.
That's a lot of folks on here. And there's a few comp members here on here, like Gary Porter and Ken Wynn.
Yeah.
And all right, so how did they get this? How did they get this or your book?
You can buy that at the Big House. I think Capricorn Studio has some copies for sale. And of course, you can chase me down and buy them from me, and I'll be there to endorse it if you like.
Yep, I think you signed.
And you can get them at,
Yep,
it's got your name in there.
So,
and you can buy them at Amazon.com.
So we'll put his email address on the video if you want to order either his book and or his album.
That way I can sign it if you
right,
want to personalize it.
So, Paul, I want to thank you for sitting here. You're one of those people I'm just proud to know.
Well, it's a good way to spend a Tuesday afternoon,
Uh-huh.
which I didn't have anything to do anyway. Fish weren't biting today, so.
Yeah, and Paul does show up to our comp lunches every once in a while, so we're always glad to see you.
Yeah.
But thanks a lot.
Come back again in my next career.
All righty, we'll do that.